welcome to the Marina Skua podcast. My name's Marina. I'm a knitwear designer and yarn dyer based in the southwest of England. And today I'm going to be showing you a brand new pattern release and some new yarn that's in the shop, and also a little bit of what I'm knitting. And I'm going to show you a little bit of making content, which I haven't done in a while, but I'm just going to show you how I do cables without a cable needle. And so I'll be sharing a bit about that a bit later. First up is the waistcoat I'm wearing, which I shared when I finished it a couple of episodes ago, and that was when it was going to be test knitted, and the pattern is released. It's out now. It's called the Scrumper Waistcoat, and let me show you a little bit better. I have knitted it using John Arbon Textiles Appledore DK yarn, which is beautifully tweedy. It's sort of crunchy and hairy, but not really harsh and rustic. Like it's a lovely, really characterful tweedy yarn. And I think I mentioned before, all of the colourways are named after local apple varieties. So John Arbon are based down in Devon. I'm in Wiltshire, which is a couple of counties away, but we're still in the same area of the UK. So it's really nice to be working with a local yarn that's sort of deeply rooted in local heritage. So for those of you who don't know, this part of the country is particularly known for cider. In the UK, cider is alcoholic. I know in the States that's hard cider, and cider just means like apple juice. So this area is really well known for its cider, and historically there is the crime of scrumping, which is, I don't know if it's a term that's used outside the UK or even outside England. I'd love to hear if it's a term you know, if you're outside of this area. So scrumping is literally the act of stealing fruit from someone else's orchard, and it's just sort of quite quaint and really rustic and slightly cheeky, which is, I think, it's sort of what I was going for with this design, but also some of the colourway names, they're just apple varieties, which you would think would sound quite dry and boring, but there's a lot of sort of local humour in there, and some of the names are a bit mischievous. So do go, even if you're not planning on getting yarn or anything, just go and look at the Appledore colour names, because they're just quite lovely. So this one is called Dufflin. There are also ones like Pig Snout and Sheep's Nose, Sweet Coppin, and Slack My Girdle, Hang Ye Down. There are some fantastic ones, and they're all beautiful yarns. And so John Arbon have put together kits for the yarn for the pattern. So those are available on their website now, and the pattern is available on my website and on Ravelry. At the moment, I have a pattern sale on, which is running throughout December, and it is for 20% off all of my self-published patterns. And if you're planning on buying any of my yarn, maybe to go with one of the patterns, if you spend £20 on yarn on my website, you can get a pattern of your choice for free. So if you'd like to do that, please go ahead to my website. And yes. And so let me show you a bit more of the details of this. I've worn it with a collared shirt because I really like how that sits with the V-neck. If I just pop that up a second, you can probably see the shape of the neck a little bit better. So we've got a fairly deep V-neck, which is how I like it. I'm not too keen on a like a cardigan or waistcoat sitting up here. I like some space to breathe here. I've got a fairly roomy armhole so that you can have nice big sleeves. I tend to wear a lot of men's shirts in a size that's definitely not designed for me. So that adds a bit more space there. And I wanted it to be really good for layering. So I've been wearing it often with a tailored jacket on top. Because it's quite chilly out for outside. I definitely need more layers than just this. But inside, it's not the warmest because this is an old and not at all well insulated house. But I'm actually quite nice and toasty wearing this. I've got a decent bit of length on it. Hoping that's staying in focus for you. And so I've done it down to a sort of low hip level. Some of my test knitters have done cropped versions, so maybe sitting at a high hip or even a waist level, which looks really nice because you can then get quite a different silhouette with it. This length means it keeps the lower back quite nice and warm, which is important, especially if you're not wearing something high-waisted. I quite like high-waisted skirts and trousers, but I don't wear them all the time, so this is really nice to have with lower-waisted things. But the idea is that it's really versatile, so you can change the length. There are instructions in the pattern for just how to adjust the length. It's not at all complicated, but just so that's spelled out for you, because I think just having it made really nice and clear that, you know, it's going to be your garment and you can make it be what you want it to be. I would like it to be able to suit a lot of different styles. Like I have quite a particular style, but I think it works well as a unisex design. At least one of my test knitters made it for one of the men in their life, and so it looks really good on them. And so yeah, it's worked bottom up. So you start with the hem, and the button band here is worked at the same time as the rest of it, so there's no picking up stitches around the button band. So you work the buttonholes as you go. And it's got these nice little details on the side, which I'm hoping will show up decently there. So you've got the moss stitch on the hem. There's no ribbing on it. So it's moss stitch here, which then travels up the side. And you've got a couple of cables that go up along next to the moss stitch there. And then it follows round the armhole there. And then you've got half of that cable column on each side of the button band, and that follows round the neckline. And then the moss stitch carries on round the back neck, which that's worked as part of the button band, so it's worked as an extension and then stitched down, which gives a really nice, neat finish. I don't like it when you have a pattern that runs up the front that's a nice little detail and then it just stops here. Sometimes it's essential, but I do like a little bit of continuation around the shoulders and neck. I think it's nice. And a lot of this design it's not super complicated or elaborate. It's just paying attention to little details, like where you've got shaping around the armholes and at the neck. It's including those as part of the design and not just accepting them as something that has to happen, if that makes sense. I don't know. So the cables, rather than just sort of stopping at the armhole because those stitches are decreased, it follows it round. And I think this part here, I don't really think of underarms as the most romantic part of the garment. But this detail here, the way the moss stitch and the cables flow around the armhole, I really enjoy. And those are the little elements that I really like in some of my more like classically shaped patterns. So yes, I think, is that all the things I wanted to say about the pattern? I hope so. So yes, I really like it. I will be hopefully on Instagram showing different ways you can style it, because I've said it can be quite versatile for different styles. I mean, today I'm going fairly androgynous with the style, but I'd like to show how it looks, for example, with a big skirt, because I like wearing skirts, especially from hand-woven fabric. I'll show how it looks with a jacket, and lots of things like that. I'll be showing those on Instagram, just in a little reel, and actually I can post reels as shorts here on YouTube So if that's something you're interested in, if you're not on Instagram but like my videos here, let me know if you would also like to see my reels on YouTube. And that means you don't have to be on Instagram if you don't want to and you don't miss out on stuff. So yes, making this, sorry, it's already been a very long week, and I have said it before, I'm quite tired all of the time now. I haven't even mentioned that I am facing in the other direction in this room to usual, because generally back there is just chaos. We've got the playpen just there. But I have made a concession to festivity, and I've got the Christmas tree up with some lights and a single little sheep ornament just there. Usually I go all out with the decorations, but I haven't got around to it yet. It hasn't been pulled over yet, so that's a win. I'm counting that as a victory. Yes, okay, so making the Scrumper Waistcoat. If you are looking for something to look forward to in the new year, previously I have done something I call the Out of the Dark make-along. I know a few of you have participated before and have really enjoyed it. It is something that I like to do to sort of get us through the second half of winter. Like winter when it's like this, it's snowy outside, the sun is out, the sky is blue, everything is crisp and chilly and beautiful, and that's completely lovely. But that's mostly not what winter in the UK looks like. It's generally brown and muddy and grey. And then once you get past all of the niceness of December and then New Year, it's just kind of limping along until the bulbs start coming out and Gardener's World starts again. So the Out of the Dark make-along is something I start on the 1st of January, running through to the spring equinox, and it's just a nice little way to bring a bit of joy to the gloomy second half of winter. So I will be running that this year. Didn't run last year because I wasn't working and everything was and yes, I'm really looking forward to it. It will be running on Instagram, and also I'm going to have a specific channel for it in my Discord server. The Discord server is exclusive to my patrons. Love my patrons, thank you very much to all of them. A couple of them test knitted this waistcoat and have made beautiful versions and have given really lovely feedback. So I'm ever appreciative to my testers. Do go and have a look if you're able to use Ravelry. On Ravelry there are some really nice versions on there. Yes. Out of the Dark make-along. So yes, to take part, you just need to make something using my yarn or patterns. So this would be an ideal project. The make-along runs for not quite 3 months. And so that's an ideal amount of time if you don't knit literally all the time as I do. I feel like that's a good amount of time to make a waistcoat. You don't have to worry about sleeves, which is always nice when you just get to here and then you're done. It's magical. Yes, there will be prizes. They will be good ones. One I can show you now that is ready to go is one skein of Dufflin of the Appledore DK. This is the yarn that this is knitted in. John Arbon have very kindly given me this one to share with people who participate in the make-along. Works in progress are welcome. You don't necessarily have to finish. You just need to post on Instagram or the Discord server if you are a patron and would like to participate there. Talk a little bit more about Patreon in a minute because it's important. And yes, you just tag me and use the hashtag OutOfTheDarkMAL, all one word. It's a hashtag, of course, it's all one word. And then I will pick prizes. I've yet to decide whether I will be picking prizes periodically as I go along or whether I'll just do a nice big bundle of them at the end. I'll have a think about that. I will be sending out a newsletter with all of the details for the make along before it starts on the 1st of January. So if you are thinking that it sounds nice and like something you'd like to participate in, make the most of the winter sale. Go and pick up a pattern for nice and cheap, either on my website or Ravelry, or if you want to scoop up some of my yarn, again, £20 of yarn and you get a free pattern. I will say with ordering yarn, if you buy now, it's probably not going to show up in time for Christmas because there's a big backlog at the moment with Royal Mail strikes. It's all been a bit difficult. I know a lot of small businesses in the UK at the moment are finding it quite hard because this should be the busiest time of year, and it's either less busy because people are reluctant to get things online, or it's far more busy because people are saying, where's my stuff? It is super difficult. Things will show up, it's just all arriving a bit more slowly. So if you want to skip out on all of the current postage woes, which I'm fairly sure will clear up, because I think the last strikes have happened now, so they should be getting through everything. Gift cards are fantastic. I have gift cards on my website. If you would like to get something Marina Skua for someone, but you don't want to have to pick colours or yarn weights or whatever, you can send them a gift card. They arrive via the magic of email, so you don't have to wait for the post, and then they can pick things out themselves. If you know that someone is struggling for a present for you, send them a link to a Marina Skua gift card. I know a few people did that, I think last year, and just sent them to family and said, just one of these please, and then I can pick my yarn and make something nice. It's a nice way to do it. And, or you know, if you just know that you'll want something at some point but aren't quite sure what yet, yes. Yeah, so that is that on the Scrumper Waistcoat. And the make along, again, it'll start 1st of January. I'll send out full details to my mailing list, so make sure you're on the mailing list. And yes, so I have some yarn to show you. I am not as up to date with my Mendip DK dyeing as I would like to be, but I've got some, and I actually think the colours I've done work really nicely all together as a big colour scheme. You know, quite cool bluey greeny colours, and then little pops of nice warm toastiness. So yes, there are a few colours of Mendip DK in the shop now. So there are a couple of the pairs. So this one is teal. I'm really liking the light sunny version of the teal. So just very quickly, if you are not familiar with my Mendip yarn, I dye each colour on a dark grey, mid-grey but dark coloured base, and then a white one. And so that gives colour pairs which work really nicely together and make it easier to put together colour schemes for stranded colour work and things, because I love stranded colour work, and it's a woolen spun yarn which works really nicely for it. So this one is teal. We've got You, which is a new colour that I introduced last month. I really like this sort of dark, rich green. And on the sunny base, it comes across like quite greyish. So it's actually not a million miles away from that. And that's the teal on the stormy base. Sorry, not stormy, cloudy. I used to do stormy, it's now cloudy. Things have changed, my brain hasn't caught up yet. And so I think that little cool bluey greeny palette there is lovely. Then we have Night, which is a nice rich dark blue. So this is a proper sort of very slightly greeny navy. And then that's a nice almost denim-y blue on the sunny. I love all of these ones. Just keep putting them on my face. And then these ones aren't pairs. But there's Beach on the Cloudy, which is a nice copper beach colour. The copper beach outside our house has finally lost pretty much all of its leaves, which is a real shame. But it's still looking lovely out in the snow. And then this one is another colour that I introduced last month, which is Clay. So that's on Mendip DK. And I really, really love, I did a little bit of swatching recently with, what did I use? Teal, You, Night on the sunny base, and then the undyed Sheep Sunny, and I really like that palette. So, you know, might be coming up with a little design with those, but it's not something I'm ready to show yet. And so there are lots of nice combinations you can do there, or, you know, there are quite a few skeins of each colour. So lots of options for projects. Yes, and I mentioned last time, I think with the Mendip 4-ply, but it also applies for the Mendip DK. If there is a colour that you like that I dye that isn't currently in stock, or there isn't enough stock for the project you'd like, so if you'd like to make a jumper in a larger size and there aren't enough skeins available, there is a dyed to order option on the website as a separate listing. It takes a bit longer because I have to actually dye that up, but it's the same price and it means that you get all of the yarn you want for your project. You can make sure it's all from the same batch, and it means that you can get it sooner than if we just wait for my dye schedule to get there, because at the moment I'm prioritising sample knitting, and it's a real shame that I'm doing so much knitting all the time at the moment and I can't show you any of it. I've got 1, 2, 3, I've just finished 2 samples. I've got 3 more, 4 more that I'm doing at the moment, all with deadlines in January. It's a lot of knitting, and I will be, before I send off each of these things, I'll record a bit of video with them so that when they're released in their respective publications, yarn companies, whatever, I'll be able to show what I've been working on and not just like a photo from whoever it is who's publishing it. So next year will be much more interesting from the things Marina is knitting point of view. So yes, but on that, I do have some knitting I'm going to show you, which I admittedly showed you last time, but there's more of it, which is surprising considering in between then and now there's been a lot less of it. So I talked last month about the Cliff pattern, which is by Teresa Schingler. Once again, I hope I'm saying that right. No one's corrected me on it, so fingers crossed it's okay. Welsh is a hell of a language. I think last time I had done about this much, and then I got to about this much, and then I ripped it all back, and now I'm back to here again. So I had said that I was making the smallest size. I was hoping that I was going to have enough yarn and that the fit would work out, because the yarn I'm using is hand-spun yarn that is heavier than what the pattern calls for, and I've also got less than the pattern calls for because just being sensible and practical about when I knit other people's patterns is not something I do, is just not. And so I tend to take a bit of a gamble. In this case, it didn't pay off. By the time I got to the point where I was not quite, but almost ready to split the front and back at the underarms, because I haven't. I'll put a photo of what it will look like in here so you can see. I shall move slightly so that I can put it here. And yes, so it's going to be sleeveless. Apparently I'm going for the sleeveless V-necks at the moment, but this one will be quite cropped. I was intending it to be even more cropped, but actually the way it's worked out, it was going to end up being too wide and too short. So it was just going to be weirdly too boxy. So I ripped it all out, and given that this is what I do, I have messed around with the pattern a bit, and in the stockinette sections, so the plain sections, I have taken out some stitches. So I think I've taken some out of all of the stockinette sections. So there are bits under the arms, and I think that's the centre back, and then there's a stockinette bit either side of the centre front panel. So I've made sure that I've taken out the same number of stitches at each underarm and from the front and back, so that the stitch counts will still balance. So I will be doing a different number of decreases, both at the underarm and for the V-neck, and then the back neck bind off. But as long as I do the same number for each, it should all work out. This is the good thing about doing things bottom up, is that decreases are a lot easier to work out than increases, because increases you have to work out in pattern, and you sort of have to set everything up as you go. Whereas doing bottom up, everything's already set up and you can just get rid of stitches as needed-ish. So I will be doing probably some more maths as I go along. I did have to, because of the way these cables flow up from the ribbing, because I changed the number of stitches, I had to change which row of the cable pattern I started on to make sure that it would line up nicely here, because that's one of the features I really like from the pattern. That's sort of what I was saying about how I enjoy when sort of essential parts of the garment are included within the design. So here, you know, we've got a transition from ribbing to the main body pattern, and instead of just bunging on some ribbing and then putting some cables in, it's been carefully considered, like where they line up and how those patterns line up so it flows nicely, and I just really enjoy that. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm not knitting on it nearly as much as I would like, owing to aforementioned epic amounts of sample knitting. So this is my weekend project, which I am allowed to do on weekends when I'm not panicking. And so when I am working on it, it goes really quite nice and quickly because it's a fairly heavyweight yarn. This is all the yarn I have left. So hopefully it'll work out nicely. We'll see how it goes. And it might just be that I need to adjust how much ribbing I do at the V-neck and the armholes when I get to the end of it. I've just had a mad thought. So I tend to do armholes 2 at a time, as if they were sleeves or socks or mittens or whatever, because 2 at a time is the way I prefer to do things, so you don't have to do exactly the same thing twice. It might be madness. I could do both armholes and the neckline at the same time. I think that's possible. I might give it a go. It might be a bit much. I'd have to have 3 ends of yarn. No, and I've only got 1 ball. So doing 2 at a time, I usually work with the outside of the ball and then wherever the inside of the ball is. There we go. And so 1 sleeve or armhole or whatever it is goes from each end. Nah. One day when I have more balls of yarn, I'm going to try that. It's stupid, but I'm going to try it. Because then you get the same amount for each of them. and then you've just done all the ribbing in one go. Not sensible. Probably don't do that. I definitely will try it though, because it's stupid and I love it. So yes, this is fun. It's got simple cables. The cables are interesting because they're all nice and sort of trellisy and interweavy. Interweavy is definitely a word. But they're all just 3x3 cables that just go in different directions and different combinations of knits and purls. And I'm just very quickly going to show you how I do cables without a cable needle, because I am a fairly recent convert on the not using a cable needle thing. Again, because when I tried to do it previously, I was just doing it wrong. And you know, you'd lose track of stitches and it's all silly. So I shall quickly work out where I am, and then I'll show you how I do that. So I'm hoping Teresa won't mind me using her pattern as an example here. So at the moment I'm on the back right, so I've got my side marker here. I have put markers in just to help me keep track of where I am. I say markers, you know, as ever, they are just tatty bits of yarn. So I've got a navy blue one for my beginning of round, and then little orange ones for the front sections, and then teal ones for the back, and a green one for the side marker. And that just helps me know where I am and what bit of cabling I should be doing next. So here, these ones are just knitted, and we've got some pearls. Oh, another thing I was going to show you. I can find it sometimes difficult, if I'm not paying attention, to keep track of whether I'm on a cable round or a plain round when working in the round. So if you're knitting back and forth with cables and you're only doing cables on right side rows, it's really, really easy to keep track of what you're doing, because you do the cables on the right side rows and then just work the stitches as they appear on wrong side rows. But when you're knitting in the round, you're always working on the right side, and so sometimes you can forget whether you've done a cable row, a cable round, or a plain round. And a way I have found of fairly reliably working out, other than just looking at it, is to find where you've done a cable and you get a gap where you've crossed the stitches over. So I can get my thumb through there. And if you find that gap and sort of pull it apart a little bit between the cables, you can see there, I'm hoping you can see, that there are 2 strands of yarn. And so that means I've done 2 rows. So the cable row and then the plain, 2 rounds, the cable round and then the plain round. And that means I need to do a cable round now. And so that's just a nice quick way of checking, and you can do that with most like twists and cables. You just sort of stick your finger in the twisty bit and just see how many strands of yarn there are. It's the bit of yarn between the stitches that you would pick up if you were doing a make one increase or something. So yes, I need to do a crazy cross here, and so I need to do a 3/3 knitted right cable here. So I need these 3 stitches to go in front of these 3 stitches, which means they go across that way. Now usually I would transfer those 3 stitches to a cable needle. I would then knit these 3 stitches and then knit those 3 from the cable needle. But if you've done cables, you always lose the cable needle, and it's a lot of faff, and it actually put me off doing cable projects that had lots of cables. So sometime last year I started doing it like this. So you get your working needle and you stick it through the stitches that would be going on the cable needle. So that's those 3 there. And then the 3 that you would then knit, I'm going to fluff this up now that you're watching, you pull off. So those ones at the front stay on the working needle. Then with my stitch holding needle, I will put the stitches I'm holding with my fingers back on that needle. So they're all there to be worked there. And then I will slip those 3 stitches from my working needle back onto that needle. And so there I've got my stitches crossed, all ready to work. And so now I can just knit those 6 stitches from that needle. I realise I'm showing you this with a very fuzzy hand-spun yarn that doesn't have great stitch definition, but I'm hoping it's clear enough and that the message comes across. And then I've just got those, and that cross is done. So those stitches are crossed over, and then I can carry on. And I can just show you again, just with a 1/1 cable here. So with this one, I'm again going to be doing a right cross. So I've got my 2 stitches there. I want this one to cross over the front of this one. So I will go into that stitch there. That other stitch I will hold between my thumb and my forefinger, slip that one off, put that stitch back on there, and then slip that one. So those 2 stitches are now crossed and ready to be knitted. It's magic. It makes it so much more simple. And just I know that it's not a method that pans out for everyone. Some people definitely prefer to use a cable needle, and I think a cable needle can help to visualize what you're doing a bit more. But if you like sort of speed and efficiency and minimal faff, I think it's a really nice method. And so I'd love to hear, have you tried doing cables without a cable needle? How have you found it? Yeah, I'd love to hear your experience of doing cables. So yes, enjoyable cables, fairly heavyweight yarn, so this shouldn't take me too much longer now that I have hopefully overcome the hiccups with the sizing. And I will write up some notes on Ravelry, just on the modifications I've made. I won't give a great amount of detail because it's not my pattern and I'm not intending it to be, well, it's sort of, if you are interested and comfortable with making those sorts of alterations yourself, then it'll just show how you might do that, but I'm not just going to write everything out because I'm not just writing out another size of the pattern. So yes, this happens annoyingly frequently where I just choose the wrong weight yarn or don't have enough. My approach to knitting my own patterns and other people's patterns is very, very different and slightly chaotic. So yes, I'm really, really enjoying this. Lovely pattern, really well written one from Teresa. Another thing that I really enjoy in the pattern is it's got quite a few charts because you've got all the different cables and things. She has them at the beginning of the pattern with all of the written instructions, because I know that a lot of people like to follow written instructions for stitch patterns. But when you're getting used to the pattern and scrolling back and forth between where you are in the pattern and up to the charts, and it's all a bit faffy and annoying. And if you've got the written instructions and don't use the written instructions, there's a lot of scrolling around. Again, I'm using this on my phone. I tend to follow patterns from the phone. But Teresa has put all of the charts just one after the other without the written instructions at the end of the pattern, which it took me a while to discover, even though she wrote out that that's what she's done, and it's very sensible. This is why you read patterns. And so yeah, so I can just have all of the charts there on a single page. I've taken a screenshot of that page, so I don't even have to go into my files and things to try and find the pattern. And now that I've got everything set up and I know what I'm doing in between the cable charts, I can just look at which bit of the chart I'm on. And it's at the stage now where I've done enough of it and I've basically got the charts memorized. But when I was still getting used to them and which way the cables go and everything, that was a really, really handy feature of the pattern. So yay, well done, Teresa. It's a really, really nice design, and I hope that other people will knit it because it's beautiful and a really nice speedy knit if you don't keep ripping it back and starting again. So yes, I think that's all the things I have to share with you at the moment. So this will be my last episode before Christmas. This weekend I have a Zoom call with my patrons, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to have a little bit of mulled wine, and I might get a tiny bit festive because I can have mulled wine this year, and I love mulled wine. It's one of my favourite things about winter. And I really enjoy my patron chats. It's so, so nice just to have a group of people who just have a lot of interesting interests, and seeing what people are knitting. Some of them are test knitters for me, and so seeing how their test knits are coming along is really, really lovely. And just seeing what different projects people are doing, and hearing about different crafts, and there's always interesting discussion. And I mention Patreon every single time because at the moment it's always been something that has been important to this channel since I've set it up, but now it's more important than ever. Like, these videos, they're not perfect or anything, but I really like sharing what I'm doing with you, and I know quite a few of you enjoy spending a bit of time with me, and I love that. But it does take a long time to put together, and my time now is quite limited. And so it's just a way to help keep it literally keeps this podcast going. The people on Patreon have been fantastic, supporting this business. It literally is helping me keeping going at the moment. And it's a lovely group of people. It's so, so nice just to have that little community. We've got our Discord group, which is a really nice place to see what everyone's up to. And if you're not too keen on sharing over video on the Zoom calls, it's a nice sort of text and picture way to share what you're up to and see what other makers are up to, or you can just lurk and watch what other people are doing. And also there's no obligation to join at all. Yes, so you get bonus videos of other projects I'm up to. It's usually focused on a single thing. Often they're a little bit more tutorial based, but I think this month's one is going to be a fairly chatty one. And yes, there are always pattern and yarn discounts for some of the higher tiers. I say the higher tiers, they're comparatively inexpensive. They start from £2 a month, and that is enough promoty chat from me. Thank you so much for bearing with me, and thank you especially to the people who are helping a small business in what is a bit of a tough winter. I appreciate every single one of you, whether you subscribe or not. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to catch you in January. Bye bye.